It began with a scream no one else heard. Not the kind that shatters glass. The kind that lives inside a man, quiet and unbearable. The kind that echoes in the cracks between what he understands and what he's afraid to know. Elias stood alone, in the marble foyer of the apartment she had once called a sanctuary. Everything smelled of her perfume, violets and smoke. On the floor, a single Jungian book lay open, face down. The anima is the bridge to the unconscious, the page read. But when repressed, she becomes chaos incarnate. He didn't remember coming here, not really. All he knew was that the woman who had unraveled him piece by piece was gone, and that Carl Jung had warned him, warned every man. But like most men, Elias hadn't listened. He walked slowly into the living room, each step cracking, like ice underfoot. The walls were lined with her paintings, abstract, fractured, but always watching. Her voice echoed in his memory. "Do you want the truth, Elias? Or do you want to keep pretending you understand women?" He'd laughed when she said it. But now, standing in her absence, he realized she wasn't taunting him. She was daring him to look deeper. She had always spoken in riddles. Not for mystery, but protection. From what? He didn't know. Only that she had left suddenly, leaving behind nothing but a note, a symbol scrawled in red ink, and that single book by Jung. The anima is not what you desire. She is what you fear. He sat down on the edge of her velvet couch, the silence swallowing him whole. He picked up the book, and beneath it, hidden beneath a false bottom in the table drawer, was a cassette recorder. He pressed play. A click. Then static. Then her voice. "If you found this, Elias, you're already too late. Not for me, but for yourself." Carl Jung said that when a man ignores the feminine within, she turns. She becomes wrath. Not the woman, the archetype, the part of him that he refuses to see. I became that for you, a mirror, and now you're breaking. They told me not to get involved with you, that you'd never understand the kind of woman who sees behind things. But I wanted to try. And you... Her breath hitched. "You thought I was a fantasy. You never saw the truth. Not even when I was bleeding in front of you." He hit stop. His throat closed. They'd argued, yes, often. But he hadn't thought she meant it literally. Bleeding? Was it metaphor, memory, or a warning? He rewound the tape and pressed play again. But this time, it cut to a different, voice male, calm, chilling. Subject 43A has begun transmitting messages to the outside. The anima complex is accelerating. Identity bifurcation confirmed. She believes she is not entirely herself anymore. She claims she is becoming her own archetype. Elias dropped the recorder. Who had recorded that? He didn't remember any of this. Not a project, not a subject, nothing about identity bifurcation. Unless, no. That was madness, wasn't it? He stood and walked to her bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. The scent was stronger there. Clove cigarettes, a trace of salt. Her laptop sat open on the bed. The screen flickered. A journal entry was loaded on the screen. It was dated 3 days before she disappeared. I showed him the truth, and he mistook it for manipulation. That's the danger of the anima. When she speaks, men don't hear a voice. They hear a trap. They hear the mother they couldn't please, the lover who left, the wound they never stitched. But I wasn't trying to seduce him. I was trying to initiate him. Initiation always begins with loss. Elias read the words twice. Something in him cracked. He looked at the symbol she'd drawn on the note before she vanished. It wasn't just an abstract design, it was a glyph. The symbol for syzygy, Jung's term for the union of opposites. Anima and animus, conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine. A fusion. Suddenly it hit him. She wasn't trying to run away. She was trying to lead him somewhere, to a place inside himself that he had never dared to go. The anima wasn't her, it was him. Everything he had projected onto her, the love, the fear, the need to dominate. the fear of being controlled. It was all a reflection of the internal feminine he refused to acknowledge. And when he failed to see her fully, she vanished. Because he wasn't ready. But maybe now he was. The computer screen flickered. Then a video began to play. Her face appeared. Not live, a recording. If you're seeing this, Elias, then you finally started listening. She paused. You need to come to the gallery. The one we never visited together. Look behind the last painting. You'll understand everything then. But you have to come alone. No one else can do this for you. The screen went black. His heart thudded in his chest. The gallery. Of course, she had mentioned it in passing once, said it was a place that scared her, inspired her, said that the last painting she left there was unfinished, but alive. He stood. No more theories. No more pretending he understood. It was time to follow her trail, not as a man chasing a woman, but as a man chasing the part of himself that had been silent for too long. He grabbed the note, the book, the recorder, and walked out the door. Behind him, the apartment fell still, but something unseen stirred. A shadow within him had begun to move, and what it would reveal, he wasn't ready to face. Not yet. She felt it before she saw him. The gallery was a cathedral of forgotten dreams, hidden deep in the winding streets of Zurich. The air smelled like old canvas and varnish, a faint metallic tang underneath. Soft lights illuminated walls crowded with faces, landscapes, and abstract forms, but among them, one painting seemed to breathe. Elias stepped inside, clutching the note tight in his hand. The words replayed in his mind. Look behind the last painting. The gallery was nearly empty, just a single attendant in the corner, eyes glued to a phone. He moved toward the back, heart pounding. Each painting whispered secrets. Colors bled into one another like memories merging. He stopped before a massive canvas, the edges rough, as if it had been torn from something larger. He reached behind it. His fingers brushed cold metal, a small, rusted latch. He pulled, and the painting swung forward to reveal a hidden alcove. Inside, a small desk held a journal, scattered sketches, and a locked box. He pulled out the journal. The handwriting was hers, sharp, urgent, sometimes almost frantic. The Anima is a paradox. She is both prisoner and liberator. To embrace her fully is to embrace chaos, but also creation. Men fear the chaos and reject her. They silence her, but she never dies. She waits, like a sleeping storm. Elias flipped through more pages. Sketches of faces, some human, some monstrous, merged in swirling patterns. Notes in the margins about shadow integration and psychic wholeness. One entry stopped him cold. Tonight, I met with Dr. Kramer. He says the project is advancing too fast. The agency wants to weaponize the Anima, to create perfect operatives who can manipulate emotions by embodying the feminine archetype. They don't understand that the Anima is not a tool. She is a living force. Elias closed the journal. The locked box beckoned. He fumbled with the clasp, heart pounding harder. Click. Inside was a cassette labeled Project Syzygy, Phase 4. He loaded it into the recorder. The voice that emerged was cold, clinical. Subject 43A has been lost to the Anima complex. The subject demonstrates unpredictable emotional oscillations and increased empathy, risking operational security. Then her voice, softer, almost pleading. I tried to warn you. The Anima cannot be controlled. You think you're holding a secret, but it's the secret holding you. Static, then silence. Elias sat back, overwhelmed. The gallery seemed to close in around him. Outside, the sky darkened. Suddenly, the attendant appeared. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. Elias looked up, heart racing. She smiled, a knowing, unsettling smile. The Anima calls to those who listen. But sometimes, answering her summons is the beginning of the end. Elias swallowed hard. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone who once tried to hold the storm," she said, turning away. Before he could follow, she vanished into the shadows. Alone, Elias realized the truth. This journey wasn't just about understanding a woman who disappeared. It was about facing the deepest, darkest parts of himself that most men fear to confront. And the Anima was just getting started. The air outside the gallery was sharp with early winter frost. Elias wrapped his coat tighter, the weight of the journal and cassette pressing like a secret too heavy to carry alone. His mind replayed the attendant's warning. Answering her summons is the beginning of the end. He wanted to believe it was metaphor, that the Anima was just a theory, an idea Jung invented to explain women's mysteries. But after everything, the disappearance, the recordings, the hidden project, it felt like something darker was lurking just beneath his skin. Back at his apartment, the silence was oppressive. The shadows in the corners seemed to twitch with life. He poured a glass of whiskey and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. Then the phone rang. His heart slammed against his ribs. The caller ID was blocked. He hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice whispered, barely audible. "Elias, you don't know me, but I've been watching. I know what you're looking for." "Who is this?" he demanded. "There's more than one way to understand the Anima. Jung's truth is just the surface. The real secret is in the shadows, where men's fears and desires collide." Elias gripped the phone tighter. "Meet me tomorrow, midnight, Café des Ombres, alone." The line went dead. He stared at the receiver, breath shallow. Midnight wasn't far away. The next day crawled by in a blur. At midnight, he arrived at the cafe, a hidden place known only to those who sought answers no one else dared speak aloud. The scent of old books and burnt espresso filled the air. A woman sat alone at a corner table, her face veiled by a dark hood. When she looked up, her eyes were sharp, unsettlingly bright. "You're Elias," she said. "And you are? Someone who's been where you are. Who knows the Anima's cost?" She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos. Men, women, faces twisted by fear and rage. The aftermath of failed attempts to integrate the feminine within. They call it the fragmentation. When a man denies his Anima too violently, it fractures his mind. The project you found, it's not just academic. It's a battlefield. Elias swallowed. "Why tell me this?" "Because you're next. And because you might still have a choice." Suddenly, the cafe door slammed open. Two men in dark suits entered, scanning the room. The woman's eyes narrowed. "Run!" Elias didn't hesitate. They bolted through back alleys, the city's pulse thrumming in his ears. Behind him, footsteps, fast, relentless. He ducked into a narrow passage, heart pounding. But a hand grabbed his shoulder. He spun around. The woman. "Trust no one," she hissed. "Especially those who say they want to help." The footsteps grew closer. She pulled out a small device, pressing a button. A flash of light, then a wall of smoke. When it cleared, the pursuers were gone. Elias gasped. "Who are you?" he demanded. She smiled darkly. "Someone who knows the Animas, true power, and the terrible price men pay when they try to silence her." The city outside was waking, but Elias felt trapped in a nightmare where the lines between love, fear, and madness blurred. He realized the journey to understand her, the Anima, was far from over, and the real danger was just beginning. Night had fallen heavy over Zurich, wrapping the city in a cold, suffocating silence. Elias and the woman, her name was Mara, moved swiftly through narrow alleys, their breaths shallow in the frigid air. Mara's eyes flickered with urgency. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. The Anima isn't just a psychological archetype. She's a force that can consume a man from the inside out. Elias tried to steady his racing mind. But why me? Why now? Because you've been marked. The project, your connection to her, it all ties back to you. The agency thinks they can control the Anima, weaponize her. But she's wild, unpredictable, and she fights back. They stopped beneath a flickering street lamp. Mara pulled a crumpled photograph from her coat pocket, an old black and white picture of a woman with piercing eyes. She was one of the first to try, subject 43A, your lover. Elias's stomach churned. But she's gone. Gone or transformed? Sometimes the Anima transcends the physical, becomes something else, something dangerous. Suddenly, a siren wailed nearby. Mara's face hardened. We don't have much time. They ducked into an abandoned building, its walls covered in graffiti and peeling paint. Inside, Mara sat down her bag and pulled out a map dotted with symbols and annotations. This is where the agency conducts their experiments, hidden deep beneath the city. If you want to understand her, to reclaim yourself, you need to go there. Elias stared at the map, feeling the weight of inevitability pressing down. And if I refuse? Mara's gaze was cold. Then you'll never be free. The Anima will keep tearing at you until nothing remains. He clenched his fists, a storm of fear and determination swirling inside. Okay, he whispered. Show me. As they descended into the darkness of the underground tunnels, Elias felt the walls closing in, not just around him, but inside him. Somewhere deep within, the Anima stirred, and this time she wasn't silent. The cold air of the underground facility bit into Elias's skin as he followed Mara deeper into the labyrinth. Concrete walls hummed with the pulse of hidden machines, flickering lights casting long, distorted shadows. The scent of sterile metal mixed with something more unsettling, the faint trace of burnt incense, like a warning left behind. They reached a heavy steel door, marked only by a faded symbol, the same glyph of syzygy he'd seen in her note. Mara pulled out a small keycard from her pocket and swiped it. The lock clicked open. Inside, the room was lined with screens showing faces frozen in anguish, bliss, confusion. Men and women trapped in some kind of psychological crucible. Tubes and wires snaked from their heads, feeding data into unseen machines. This is the heart of the project, Mara whispered, where they tried to weaponize the Anima, to turn it into a tool for control. Elias's eyes were drawn to a figure strapped to a chair in the center. Her face was hidden behind a mask, but the tremors in her hands told a story of torment. She's still alive? Elias asked. Alive, but trapped. The Anima has fractured her mind, split her identity. She's become the archetype, the lover, the mother, the destroyer, all at once. It's a living nightmare. Elias stepped closer, his heart pounding. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed through the room. His own voice, distorted and layered with something else. You can't run from her. The Anima is inside you. Deny her and you destroy yourself. He turned sharply, but no one was there. Mara grabbed his arm. You need to face this, or be consumed. A sudden alarm blared. Red lights flashed. The facility was locking down. Time's up, Mara said grimly. Elias felt the walls closing, in, both outside and within. The Anima was no longer just a theory. She was real, alive, and demanding to be acknowledged. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was next, the final confrontation with the shadow he'd tried to ignore his entire life.